In this video, I'm going to be going over with you guys why strength doesn't correlate to muscle, right? It doesn't always correlate to muscle, and this is a huge mistake that people make and people assume, and it changes the way they train, and it really holds them back if they want to, if their primary goal is to put on muscle, right? If you want to be a powerlifter and you want to, train for strength and get as strong as possible on bench, deadlift, squat, go for it. Powerlifting is fun. You can do what you want. But if you're here to build as much muscle as possible and do some proper bodybuilding, then you need to listen up, my friend, because you need to let go of, you need to let go of your care for lifting as much weight as possible. And I'm going to put it into perspective why strength doesn't correlate to muscle. Once you understand this, your progress is going to be exponential. You're going to optimize your training to the best it possibly is, and you're going to train hard. You're going to stimulate your muscles properly, and you're just going to grow exponentially. So before I get into this video, I just want to briefly introduce myself to you guys. So my name is Ryan, and I have undergone a physical and mental transformation over the past 3 years, transforming myself from this in 2021 to now in 2024, and now I'm on a mission to inspire and help skinny young men who struggle with finding success in the gym, who struggle to put on muscle and put on weight, to help them do those things and find success in the gym and through the gym. So without further ado, let's get into this video. So first of all, before we get into, the reasons why strength doesn't correlate to muscle, I just want to put something in your guys' head, okay? So I've been doing a little bit of research on some powerlifters, and obviously I know the bodybuilders, right? Because I'm locked in with that sort of stuff, right? But so I just want to put this into perspective. If strength correlated to muscle, why is this guy a lot bigger than this guy, right? Pause the video and just think about it. And then now once you've resumed the video, I'm going to go through who these guys are. So this guy right here is Andrew Jacked, and he is one of the most muscular men in the world. He's an Olympian, and if you don't know what the Olympia is, it is the most prestige bodybuilding competition in the world. It's the one that Arnold won, Ronnie Coleman won 8 times. It's the most prestige prize in the world to win the Olympia. So this is Andrew Jackson. He is currently in contention to win the Mr. Olympia in 2024, and this man weighs 300 pounds. He weighs 300 pounds, right? And this guy is called Eric. What was his name? Eric Lillybridge. I'm not really into the powerlifting world like that, but I think he's one of the best powerlifters, and he's also known as I can't remember what his nickname was, but he's got a nickname. He's very renowned in the powerlifting industry. He's ridiculously strong, and I'm pretty sure he weighs a really similar amount of weight. So yeah, I just want to leave you guys with this question right here. So why is this guy, if he's so much stronger and he's one of the strongest men and powerlifters in the world, why is he not as big as this guy? And why is this guy one of the biggest men in the world, but he doesn't train for powerlifting and strength? I'm gonna give you guys a definition of the different types of strength training versus training for muscle growth. So if you want to train for strength, you train and you prioritize having the ability to exert as much force as you possibly can, measured by how much one can lift on one exercise, and this is usually measured through doing 1 rep maxes on the squat, bench, and deadlift, and other exercises too. However, training for muscular hypertrophy and muscle growth focuses on obviously increasing your muscle size. And this growth occurs when your muscle fibers inside your muscles increase. So you don't necessarily prioritize strength, and you prioritize obviously stimulating the muscle, and you don't prioritize how heavy you go. You only focus on obviously micro tearing the muscle fibers, because that's what gets bigger, therefore that's what provides muscle growth. So they're 2 completely different types of training, and this brings me on to my first point, why strength doesn't necessarily correlate to muscle, and you need to stop prioritizing strength and getting the rep up if you solely want to grow muscle. And this is because they're 2 completely different focuses. As I have just said to you, training for strength and training for muscular hypertrophy and muscle growth are 2 completely different things, and that is why these guys look completely different, because they have different goals. This guy may not lift as much, and this guy may be one of the strongest powerlifters in the world, but this guy is a lot bigger and has a lot more muscle than this guy, even though this guy's ridiculously jacked. You can't take it away from him. If he trained for putting on muscle, he'd have a lot more muscle than if he trained for strength. So obviously, strength training, you only focus on getting the rep up. You just, on the bench for example, you only focus on moving the bench back down moving the barbell back down and moving it back up. That's your only focus if you're training for strength, to trying to get the rep up. Therefore, you don't consider isolating a muscle and giving the muscle the time and attention it needs in order for it to grow. You don't give the muscle enough stimulation. You don't get as much blood in the muscle because you're not giving it, the, as I said, the time and attention it needs. And you're not going to have any mind muscle connection, and as I said, you're not going to have any blood in the muscle. Therefore, you're not going to be able to burn the muscle and fatigue the muscle. Therefore, you're not going to be able to take it close to failure or past failure at all, right? You're not going to be nowhere near, right? So that means that muscular hypertrophy can't happen. So if you're training, if you're doing your movements, if you're doing your heavy movements and completely prioritizing the amount of reps you get with the heaviest weight you possibly can, without prioritizing isolation of the muscle and getting the blood in there and the proper contractions, getting the stretch at the bottom, pausing and going back up and really slow eccentrics, then you're not going to grow muscle. I hate to break it to you, because you're not allowing all of these things to happen. No isolation, no muscle stimulation, no blood in the muscle, no fatigue in the muscle, and you're not going to reach failure. Therefore, you're not going to grow your muscles. So if you train for strength, don't expect to put on ridiculous amount of muscle because you're training for strength, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to grow muscle, because as I said, you're not having the isolation, and as I said earlier, all of those things are going to lead to you not undergoing as much muscular hypertrophy you'd want to if you want to grow muscle, but you train for strength. And in your head, you prioritize just getting a rep up, and it doesn't matter how you get it up, you just get it up, right? So it's so important that you train for muscle. So you prioritize your technique, you prioritize the tempo of the exercise, so how slow you bring the weight back down, and pausing it at the bottom and ensuring the muscle gets the stretch it needs in order to micro tear the muscle fibers. You get the blood in there, you isolate the muscle, you give it the time and attention it needs, you stimulate the muscle properly. Therefore, you're gonna burn your muscle efficiently. You're gonna fatigue your muscle. Therefore, you're gonna take it close to failure and even past failure. Therefore, you're gonna lead to you're gonna lead to more efficient and higher quality micro tears of the muscle. Therefore, they can grow bigger, right, when those micro tears repair. And remember what I said about the micro tears leading, the bigger the muscle fibers in your muscles, the more you grow. So the more you micro tear those muscle fibers in your body, the more they have to repair, and the larger repairs they have to undergo. Therefore, they're going to grow. So it's so important that if you train for muscle, you just let go of that ego, and you don't necessarily, obviously you care about getting the rep up, but before that you prioritize how you isolate the muscle, how you give the muscle enough stimulation, how much time and attention you give the muscle during the set, your technique, making sure you're performing the exercise right, the tempo, making sure you're, as I said again, making sure you're really slowly going down, giving it the stretch and the pause at the bottom, making sure that you stimulate the muscle properly. Therefore, you're going to fatigue and burn your muscles more efficiently, and you don't necessarily need heavy weight to do this, because if you have perfect technique, then you're going to be able to do it you're going to be able to do all of this with a lighter weight, and therefore it's going to lead to you getting closer to failure and reaching failure, or even past failure, and getting assisted reps and forced reps. Therefore, you're going to grow muscle. So strength training and training for muscle are two completely different focuses. One, you focus on just getting the rep up and shifting as much weight as possible and being as explosive as possible. And the other one, you actually focus on stimulating a muscle and isolating a muscle, whereas you don't do that for strength. So if you want to train for muscle and build as much muscle as you can, then you need to let go of your ego and stop lifting and stop pushing your limits with the amount of weight you can maximally lift. You can still lift heavy, but don't lift weight that's gonna don't be doing 1 rep max all the time, and don't be, when you're progressively overloading, if your technique and you can't isolate the muscle properly, that all of that goes out the window, and you only prioritize just getting the reps because you don't want to look stupid, then reduce the weight and make sure you perform the technique of the exercise good. Make sure you're getting blood in the muscle properly. Make sure you've got good mind muscle connection. Make sure you're giving the muscle enough time and attention. Make sure you're giving the muscle enough stimulation in order for it to reach failure and fatigue as efficiently as possible in order to grow. So it's so important that you establish a difference between these, and you understand that strength training doesn't necessarily correlate to muscle, because it doesn't provide those things. Now, after I've cleared that up, that they're completely different focuses, now moving on to number 2 of why they are different. The training styles are completely different. So obviously the focus and the priority of strength training compared to training for muscle is different, which leads to the training styles being different, because they lead to different because they go down different avenues, therefore they do different things. So strength training programs specifically, and the majority of the time, they are centered around low reps. So between 1 rep to 5 reps with very, very heavy weight and longer rest times. Remember what the definition of strength training is. It's the ability to exert force. So you need to have longer rest times so your body can recover properly, so you can exert as much force as possible. However, if you're doing bodybuilding training and doing really high intensity training, you wouldn't be able to exert as much force. So that's why you see powerlifters, and that's why there's memes of powerlifters mid-set bringing a chair and bringing their whole house to the bloody, to the deadlift and squat rack, so they can have enough rest, so they can exert enough force on all of their sets. And as I said, yep, they've got the low reps. Because of this, because of the low reps, and because they don't really necessarily focus on the isolation of the muscle and the tempo and the technique and all that stuff, that combined just makes it even more of a reason why strength doesn't correlate to muscle, right? Because first of all, you're not doing all those things. You're not giving the muscle the time and attention, the stimulation, the isolation, all of that stuff. You're not going to get the blood in there. You're not going to take it to failure. On top of how you're going to have lower reps, so you're not going to give your muscle. So you're literally not going to give yourself a chance to fatigue a muscle because you've got such low reps, and that's literally another differentiation between, and that's another reason why strength doesn't correlate to muscle. So now, and obviously the goal with strength training, as I said earlier, is to lift as much weight as you possibly can. So you don't care about the stimulation and the isolation and all that stuff. Now, in comparison to training for muscle growth, higher reps, you do higher reps and you do higher volume, in comparison to strength training. You go anywhere from 6 to 20 reps. The lowest I would go, the very lowest you would go for bodybuilding and putting on muscle is 6 reps. Any lower than that, then you're doing strength training. So anywhere between 6 to 20 reps, depending on the exercise. You can do lightweight if you go to 20 reps, moderate weight, and obviously the heavy weight if you go between 6 to 8 reps. You've obviously still got to keep the technique, but you can go heavy if you can utilize the weight properly and if you can stimulate the muscle properly. But if not, then you drop the weight and you go the one back down, but that's another video, right? So that's the difference between the training styles, right? One is to focus on lifting as much as we possibly can, so obviously taking advantage of the longer rest times and the very, very heavy weight in order to lead up to when they have to do 1 rep maxes, and when they want to test their maximal strength, they're able to exert maximal force as much as possible, right? And with bodybuilding and actually putting on muscle, you focus on having higher intensity, fatiguing the muscle and burning the muscle and taking the muscle to failure, as I said earlier, which is going to stimulate muscle growth. And the final thing, so as I have identified how strength doesn't always correlate to muscle, right? Obviously going to gain a little bit of muscle, but it's not effective at all, right? I just want to leave you with a couple of things. So first of all, if strength actually correlated towards muscle, why do bodybuilders not train like powerlifters? Why do bodybuilders never do 1 rep maxes? If you ask Dorian Yates, 6-time Mr. Olympia, in my eyes, the greatest bodybuilder of all time, if you asked him what his 1 rep max on bench press was, he would say he never ever did one. Why is that? Because strength training doesn't correlate to muscle growth, and his main priority was to grow muscle. He never did 1 rep maxes, and he always focused on obviously training for muscle because that's what he did. He was in the Mr. Olympia, he won it 6 times, and you had to be extremely ridiculously muscular, so he never prioritized that. But if strength did correlate to muscle, then he would have trained like that, but obviously he didn't, so it doesn't. You see what I'm trying to say here? And if strength did correlate to muscle, why are some of the strongest men in the world not the most muscular? Ask yourself that. And now I just want, they're the sort of rhetorical questions I want to leave you guys with. And now the final thing that I want to talk about is you need to find your focus, right? You need to find what training style you want to carry out, and you need to find what focus you want to prioritize. So you need to do a evaluation of whether you want to do, you know, of whether you want to train for strength and you want to train for muscle, and whether you want to do strength training or training for muscle and muscular hypertrophy and muscle growth. I mean, it's not really that deep. You don't have to choose one for the rest of your life. You can obviously switch, and you could do a bit of both if you really want to. But what I'm saying is, if you want to grow muscle, then doing strength training, focusing on just getting the rep up and lifting as much weight as possible, and focusing and prioritizing the ability to exert as much force as possible if you want to grow muscle, is not the right thing to do. As I said, if Dorian Yates, you know, probably one of the most muscular men of all time, if not the most, he had the most dense muscle of all time, why was he not doing powerlifting training? Because it didn't correlate, because strength doesn't correlate to muscle growth, okay? So, I hope that clears it up for you, and that is the end of the video. If you guys have truly learned something, I really wish I had this video back in the day, because obviously when you start the gym, it's completely natural to want to lift as much weight as possible and you want to let your ego get to you. But if you want to grow muscle, then you've got to let all of that go. But if you're a powerlifter, then, you know, train for strength. I hope you guys have enjoyed and you've truly learned something, and I'll finally put it into perspective for you how strength doesn't always correlate to muscle, and I hope you take something away from this. If you guys have enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you leave a like, a comment and a subscription down below. It goes a long way. You can learn more from me and you can make more progress. It's a win-win in all areas, right? So I will see you guys in the next video. Adios.